Hello everyone, welcome to this week's Gran Turismo 7 Daily Race C Race and Strategy Guide where we're off to Deep Forest Raceway and we are in the Group 3 machinery. Now, credit where credit is due to PD because we've criticised them pretty heavily over the last couple of weeks for their copy and paste efforts. This one, to their credit, is a brand new combination for Daily Race C and there's some pretty interesting settings in there as well. First time we've had a mandatory pit stop required for a Group 3 race. That's normally reserved for Group 4. And we're on the racing soft tyres as well. We've got 12 laps to get around, tyre wear is at ×5 and fuel is at ×2. BOP is on, damage is light, it's a rolling start and slipstream is real. So these settings are actually quite interesting. It's nice to have a mandatory pit stop. And the question is, when are you going to make that pit stop and do you actually need to change the tyres? Because you have to make a stop, but you don't necessarily have to change the tyres. It's only the pit stop that is mandatory. So moving on to the first of two races that we're going to feature in this. Now before we get into the live action, I just want to say a quick thank you to everyone who is still watching these Gran Turismo 7 Daily Race C Race and Strategy Guides. It means a lot because when we lost access to the information for the daily races prior to them going live, it meant that I couldn't put the video together over Saturday and Sunday and then get the video out first thing on a Monday morning. We still get some of the information, so we have a little bit of a guessing game over the weekend as into what the category of car is going to be, and everyone kind of got this one wrong, to be fair. Most people were saying Group 2. I had a suspicion it might be Group 4 because of the mandatory pit stop, which is normally a Group 4 feature, but it turned out to be Group 3, and I think it's maybe a better thing for it rather than the Group 2 race, because there was a particular car in Group 2 that was going to ruin this race if it happened to be Group 2. But yeah, as I said, I want to just say a big thank you to everyone who's still taking the time to watch these Daily Race C Race and Strategy Guides. In terms of numbers, after we've moved to kind of releasing them a few hours later than normal, they're maybe around about 10% down, which I never thought would be the case. And that's down to you folks that are still taking the time to watch these videos. And maybe you enjoy them even a little bit more because I don't do too many race reviews. And on the Monday morning, I actually now go into the race live, so you're actually watching the strategy unfold in a live race situation. So maybe that is a preferable way to do it. I would say that I actually prefer putting the video together this way as well, because I quite enjoy doing a little bit of commentary over a race. And talking of commentary, let's move on to the race action now. This is going to be strategy number 1. There's basically two ways of doing this race. Do you change the tyres or do you not change the tyres? And that's what we're going to explore as this video unfolds. Now we're in the Suzuki VGT. Now the thought process behind that one was, should be pretty good on tyres and it should be a bit of a weapon on the straights. Now it is pretty good on tyres, this car. It is not the weapon I thought it might be on the straights. It's definitely not terrible, but I thought it would have a bigger advantage over something like the Porsche, which seems to be a very popular car, than it does actually have. The Porsche's traction is very nice around this track from what I can see. There's a lot of corners, maybe you're pulling out on second gear, and the Porsche's traction is prestigious or precocious, whatever word you want to use. Very, very good, let's put it that way, for coming out of these slow corners. And it just means that even though it's not the quickest car on the straight, because it gets so much pull at the beginning and acceleration, it doesn't lose out too much to something like this Suzuki VGT or the Supra that Tidgney is in front of us, who we just gave a little bit of a bump into one of the braking zones. Apologies for that, Tidgney, but it certainly seemed to have no effect on your race. So coming into the hairpin here, now my plan here was to pit on lap 1. So as we come out the hairpin, we're going to move over to the pit lane here, and to my fault, I didn't quite notice that Muscafi was just on the inside there. He had a slight little bit of overlap. Again, that just comes down to that Porsche getting that pull out the corner. When I last looked at the radar, we were a full car length ahead of Muscafi's car, but because of the pull of the Porsche, he had managed to get a nose up the inside as we tried to go into the pit lane, and thankfully none of us came too badly off it, because it's the sort of circumstance where a big accident could have unfolded. So into lap 2 we're going to go now, and we're behind a couple of Porsches. We magically make one of them disappear, and then we just magically give the other one a 1 second penalty and dirty tyres. So we're going to go up the inside of this Porsche here into this corner, pouncing on that opportunity to try and get a little bit of clean track through this twisty section and see if we can now unleash the power of this Suzuki VGT up into P9. However, we just decided we're under so much pressure from Porsches out of the slow corners, I thought, you know what, I'm going to come into the pits instead. Now, you may well have noted, you might have seen a little speck of a Supra in the distance there. That was Tidgeney's car, maybe about 4 seconds ahead of us down the road. Now, I'm mentioning that because it's going to be important as this video unfolds. Now, we're not going to change the tyres here, so we're only going to be stationary for 1.6 seconds. So, stationary time 1.6 seconds, remember that as well, not changing the tyres. And we were about 4 seconds behind Tidgeney when we made that pit stop. And of course, be very careful of the white line both on entry and exit on the pit lane. So jumping forward to lap 6 here. Now Tidgeney has just made his pit stop and he has changed the tyres. Now remember, he was about 4 seconds ahead of us and we come out he comes out the pit lane around about half a second in front of us. So there's a significant loss in changing the tyres. We'll see the kind of gap exactly when we move on to the next race. I'll tell you exactly how long or the difference is to change the tyres. But you can see we've made up a significant amount of time on Tidgeney here, but not enough to overtake him. And obviously he's now got the fresher tyres as the race progresses. Jump forward to lap 10. We're into P8 as the pit stops have unfolded. We've made our way up into P8. We've got a cluster of cars up ahead of us here, 3 of them to be precise. It's going to be a little bit of an instant here. I'm not entirely sure what happened. I think maybe the Supra went into the back of the 2 cars in front of him. Mario Sonic ends up off the track, so we make that position up there. Sonic seems to be waiting, but I do believe it was maybe the Supra that went into the back of the Sonic, who went into the back of Mario Sonic. Just so many Sonics. Who knew that little blue hedgehog was so popular, eh? Anyway, we have benefited massively up into P6 from that one. And then it was a bit of a defensive battle from that point onwards. We've got Alessandro in a yellow Porsche behind us. Now he has changed the tyres. I think we jumped that car, or certainly opened up a significant gap on that car due to not changing the tyres. But with the fresher tyres, the Porsche probably just been a much better car than this Suzuki VGT around this track as well. We're under big pressure coming into lap 12. Now our tyres are still okay, because as you're going to see here, we're going to set a blue sector, which means we've actually set a personal best sector, even though we've done 12 laps on the tyres. But we're pushing hard here at this point. I want to stay ahead of that Porsche. I want into the slipstream of that Supra for the straights as well. And eventually those rear tyres, pretty worn at the moment, and obviously the rear tyres more worn than the front tyres. We've got an imbalance of grip, and we've just asked a little bit too much of them as we're trying to stay ahead of that Porsche and bring the car home in P6. Disappointing to say the least. Certainly plenty of tyres left there. You know, the car's still fine to drive. As I said, we did a blue sector, a personal best sector on the first part of the last lap, so there was still performance in the car, but the fresher tyres just pushing us too hard. Somehow we're not going to come last in this one. RA Governor are going to pick up a half second on the last corner, which means it gets doubled up to 1 second on the line for some reason, and that means we finish ahead of them in the race in P11. So yeah, you can see from that the no change of the tyres can definitely work, and you make a significant gain on the cars that do change the tyres, but certainly struggling for grip towards the end compared to those cars as well. Let's move on to strategy 2. We're still in the same car. Muscafi behind us in the Mustang has got a good run on us coming out of the first corner. That Mustang got incredible acceleration, and my car has pretty poor acceleration, to be fair. Muscafi's going to go up the inside there, and again we're just going to lose out to the traction of the Porsche into this corner here. Alessandro again, very fast driver, starts from the back, and we battled that one a little bit, but we had to concede in the end, and that's going to put us down into P14 halfway through the first lap. Now, I did have a bit of a forced feedback problem at this point because I had jumped out of the first race into Share Factory to start making the video, and then jump back in for this one, and there's a weird problem with the Logitech Pro when it resets your force feedback. It takes like 3 seconds in the settings to just to change it back, but my wheel was super heavy, the true force was through the roof at this moment, and then coming into the hairpin I realised I was going to hit the back of the Porsche and backed out of that one. So we've completed the journey to last place. Now we've got dirty tyres as well. My forced feedback's all over the place. I'm going to pause it here. You're going to see it took me literally the time that the game was paused to fix that. Just had to do a few things in the settings. It's a weird problem with the Logitech wheel, but we're all the way down in 15th place now. And can we recover from this one? So we are going to change the tyres on this strategy here. But before we get to the pit stop, we're going to make up a few places. Muscafi had a big penalty, so we're up into P30. Not sure what happened to the Swiss driver. It's going to be a little bit of an instant here between the NSX and the Porsche, so that's going to allow us to make up a further couple of positions up into P11. So decent recovery so far. 11 seconds off the lead. It's Danny R though, who is just going to run away with this one. He's going to romp to victory, passing this Porsche down into the hairpin. At the end of the straight, the VGT, the Suzuki VGT definitely pulls, so you can get some overtakes done with it, as long as the Porsche doesn't get the best exit out of the corners. Up into P10 now, and then we're going to pit at the end of lap 6 here. And we'll take a look at the pit loss and the fuel in a little bit more detail. So into the pit lane we come. We'll put some soft tyres on. Don't have to worry about the fuel in this one. No surprises there with the fuel only at ×2. Now remember, stationary time, not changing the tyres, 1.6 seconds. Let's see how long the car is stationary when we do change those tyres. So a little bit longer than I was expecting, to be honest with you, and it's going to come in at 6.3, so I think that's a difference of about 4.7 seconds. So your pit loss to change the tyres is 17.8 seconds, your pit loss to not change the tyres is 13 seconds. So a 4.8 second difference, 4.7, 4.8 second difference between changing the tyres and not changing the tyres. That's significant. It does give you the option, as you've seen, you know, we still had plenty of tyres left at the end of the first run. So not changing the tyres is definitely a viable strategy, and you gain 4.8 seconds by not doing it. That's a big jump. Now you will lose a big chunk of time over the second part of the race, as cars on fresh tyres will be a good, you know, 7 tenths, 6 tenths, 7 tenths quicker per lap. It's a pretty fine balance between the two strategies. That's really just going to come down to circumstance. You know, do you want to have the fresh tyres at the end and not be vulnerable to cars that have changed tyres as well, or do you want to sort of jump 4.8 seconds up the road, hopefully not get involved in too many battles, and hopefully then hold on towards the end of the race and maybe gain some positions that way. There's definitely two strategies. They're both very, very viable, and can I recommend one over the other? Not really, because every race is different and the strategy you want to deploy is different on every single race, just depending on what's going on. Where do you start, what's going on around you, what drivers are in the race, do you just think you're faster than the drivers in front of you, you know, are you just going to go 4.8 seconds up the road and then get involved in a battle with other drivers, which then allows all the drivers behind you that did change your tyres to close up on you a lot quicker. It's very, very hard to kind of really just sort of nail down, go, this is the strategy, this is the way to do the race. Basically, I give you the options here, I give you the numbers, I give you my opinions on it, and then you can take that information into your races and see what you want to do. I think as I live stream this one over the course of the week, we'll probably try both strategies. Obviously, I would say that for maybe the pad players, you always probably want to be changing the tyres, to be honest with you, or if it's just bad on tyre wear. Now, I did take a look at the tyre wear on the second race, and every single driver changed tyres on the second race. I forgot to save the replay in the first one, but every single driver changed tyres on the second race. Now, looking at people's tyre wear at the 6th lap point, I think it was the best decision for most people. But if you're in the right car, something like maybe the Mazda on screen here, or the Suzuki VGT, I don't know what the Porsche is like on tyres, but you know, for the right car, the no change strategy can definitely work. But I think most people will go for the change strategy just to have the tyre comfort at the end and make sure they're not too vulnerable in terms of those rear tyres starting to go. But yeah, I'm going to wrap the video up there, folks. No lap guide in this one. I've only done laps in the Suzuki VGT. I don't think it's going to be relevant to anyone. Plenty of lap guides will come out anyway from the usual suspects, so do check them out if you're looking how to get a group free car around this track. But hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please hit that like button, please hit that subscribe button. Thank you very much for watching. I'll catch you on the next one. Goodbye now.